Welcome to our new session, and this is a new test platform which is launched a couple of years ago. And I'm delighted to be chatting with a friend, Jennifer Dewar. So, Jennifer, why don't you introduce yourself a little bit? And my first question, also, if you could answer, is your journey from being a Dickinson College graduate and then moving on to the admission side, and now being a strategic sort of advisor to Duolingo. So go ahead, tell us more.
Great, thank you, Arjun, for having me here, and hello, everybody. My name is Jen Dewar. As Arjun said, I am head of strategic engagement for the Duolingo English test, which is based in the United States, although we offer the test worldwide, and we'll talk more about that in a few minutes. I graduated from undergraduate university in 2001. I have a liberal arts degree from Dickinson College, which is in Carlisle, Pennsylvania. I studied political science, and while I was there, I spent an entire academic year on one of their study abroad programs in Bologna, Italy. That program changed the trajectory of my life. It got me very interested in international education. And what better way to work in international education than to work in college admissions? And so after I graduated from Dickinson, I started working at another liberal arts college, Connecticut College, which is based in New London, Connecticut. Fairly similar kind of school to Dickinson College. I spent 2 years there working in the admissions office. Those were the first international applications that I ever read. They were from Eastern Europe and Turkey. After that, in 2003, I moved to Durham, North Carolina, and I started working in the admissions office at Duke University, and I was there for 13 years. Did all sorts of international admissions work for Duke University. I was the first person from Duke to ever travel to India to recruit undergraduate students. After that first trip, subsequently traveled to India many, many times, and am very familiar with many cities in India and schools and students, and have some of my very favorite memories in working in admissions from being in India. And so I'm always excited to connect with old friends from India and to talk to students from India. In 2016, I moved with my family to St. Louis, Missouri, which is in the center of the United States. And I started working at Washington University in St. Louis. And I was again working in international admissions. And in September of 2017, I was in China on a recruitment trip, and the ACT was canceled. And for those of you who are students, you might not realize that this spring isn't the first time that standardized tests have ever been canceled, especially in Asia. For perhaps the last 8 or so years, there's been a wave of cancellations that have come through, especially in Asia, especially with the ACT and the SAT. And to be in China in September, when the ACT was announced that it would not be available to any students who were planning on taking it in order to be prepared to apply early decision that year, it made a really big impact on me. And I had already sort of had these thoughts that standardized testing was not serving international students very well. There were limited test dates, there were limited locations, the costs were very high. But for me, it really solidified that we needed a change in how students access testing, and the way that we administer testing and what we expect of international students. And just sort of coincidentally, Duolingo was looking for somebody to be in a role where they would help with this new test that they had launched in 2016 in bringing it to universities and asking universities to recognize the test. The Duolingo English test is much more affordable. It's $49 US compared to other traditional English language tests, which are between $200 and $300 US. It's much more accessible because it's delivered completely online, and it has been from the start when it was launched in 2016. It's adaptive, so it only takes an hour. And I was so excited about the prospect of what this test could represent and change for how students experience high stakes testing, that in 2017, I decided to take the leap and leave a 17-year-long admissions career and start working at Duolingo.
That's a fascinating journey. It's so fun to see that you moved from admissions, and now you're in a way in a very entrepreneurial sort of setting, sort of creating, sort of fulfilling a need. And that's actually another point I wanted to bring up. Was most people listening in are from schools which have traditionally had very good instructions in English in India. And they've always had this grouse against some of the tests that, okay, probably this is not the level that they're used to and they're pretty good at and proficient at. So Duolingo definitely fills a need because it's no frills, there's no need to sort of go anywhere. How does the tech behind it work, and what are the different parts of the test, and how does the tech sort of make sure that things are legit?
Yeah, so Duolingo is the only high stakes test that uses artificial intelligence from end to end. And so what that means is everything from how we create the actual test items, so the questions that a test taker receives, to how we score the test, to how we make sure that the test has been taken securely, that there's no malicious test taking behavior, is all done with AI. So we also use human proctors with security, but because we use AI from end to end, it's quite a different test taking experience. The item types are different than what a student would experience if they're taking a traditional TOEFL or an IELTS, partially because this test was conceived to be delivered online. And so when we decided that we were going to build a test back in 2012 that would be delivered online, we had to think about all of the questions that we asked students needed to, number one, be deliverable online and fit parameters that worked within an online test, including making sure that they were items that were very secure and that we could monitor very well, but also be within the academic literature and show that they would signal a student's level of proficiency. So the test itself, questions are going to be quite different. We always recommend that students try taking practice tests so that they're familiar with the kinds of questions that we ask students, because it's not the same as a TOEFL or an IELTS or an SAT or an ACT. It's also a different experience, obviously, taking a test online that's adaptive. So Arjun, for you and me, if we take the test, because we speak English as a first language, it's adaptive, and the test is smart enough to know you're a native English speaker, so you're going to get very, very hard questions very quickly, and you're going to keep on getting challenged, and you might get a question wrong, and then the test will back off a little bit and ask you an easier question, but it'll creep back up and ask you a harder question. It's an entirely unique experience for every single test taker, but the test itself takes less than an hour. And what needs to happen is our algorithms have to reach a confidence threshold that we can accurately place your English ability. And once we reach that threshold, which takes less than an hour, a student is done taking the test. But because it's an adaptive test, because we have a huge test item bank that's generated using machine learning rather than humans who generate test content. We have tens of thousands of test items, and you literally would have to take the Duolingo English test over 1,000 times to see the same item twice. And so the idea that tests could get leaked, or you could take a look at the Duolingo English test that your friend has taken, but it's not going to be the same test that you're going to take. And so we don't have the same concerns about leaked test items and those sorts of security concerns, because every test is completely different.
Fascinating. I think this is what the future is. It's definitely the whole organization seems to be future ready, so to speak. Let's zoom out a little bit and say, okay, your initial years, so many years at Duke and other universities and colleges, and you've sort of understood the angst of the student community or parents, and of course, testing, anxiety, and all of that. So, and also now it's kind of doubled up with the situation the world is in currently. And it's not just the online, in-person, hybrid, all kinds of issues with travel, closures, schools not being able to provide transcripts. What are your thoughts on things ahead in terms of role of technology in higher ed, or even in middle school and high school for that matter?
Yeah, well, I think the pandemic has accelerated the normalizing of technology in both educating but also assessing students. You know, it's sort of incredible to think back on a year ago, the idea that a high stakes test could be delivered online and it could be valid and secure, was something that many people didn't yet feel comfortable with, because we were one of the first to do it, and there just wasn't a lot of experience with it. And if you fast forward to now, you know, we've seen almost all of the traditional high stakes tests pivot to trying to deliver online, and it's really sort of normalized the experience. And while it hasn't always gone well, I think those of us who know how to do it and have a lot of experience with it have been able to do it really well. And I think it's brought a lot of confidence into what can be done online. And it's also shed light on how important it is to make education more accessible, and what a platform technology can be in democratizing access to education and access to assessments. And it's really become a necessity for us. You know, Arjun, you're a parent, I'm a parent, you know, my child is learning online this fall. She's not setting foot in her school building. And while I hope someday soon she will again, I imagine that when she does return to school, technology is going to play a larger role than it did before. And, you know, that's mostly a good thing. I think, I hope that all kids can get back into a regular school environment. There's things that you can't replicate using technology about the human experience. And I think we all hope that we can get back very soon to seeing each other in person. There's just all these intangible parts of life that can't be replicated with technology. But at the same time, I used to travel so frequently for Duolingo, and I imagine that I might travel a little bit less, because I think that we've all gotten more comfortable using Zoom, which saves us time and financial resources in terms of not having to hop on a plane and stay overnight somewhere just to have an hour-long meeting. And so I think we will probably depend more on technology than we have before, but I don't think we're going to continue to live like this once it's safer to be together in person.
Thanks for those insights. I think these are somber times, and I think just getting the right information and also knowing where the world is heading is so important. And I hope listeners can send in their questions. I'll definitely forward them to you, Jennifer. And looking forward to seeing you. This is our first fair, so it'll be exciting to have voices of the entire spectrum of this college admissions community. And so, yeah, you're welcome, and I'll see you there.
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm looking forward to being able to return to India someday. Around this time last year, I was traveling to India, and this will be the first year that I haven't gone to India, 2020, in more than 10 years. So I'm sorry to not be able to visit this year.
Hope to see you soon someday.
I hope
All
so
right.
too.
Bye.
Bye, Arjun.